RaulCortezź was a pioneer in Spanish-language radio in the United States. Born in 1905 in Veracruz, Mexico, he moved to San Antonio, where he found work as a reporter for the newspaper La Prensa, supplementing his income with a sales job at the Pearl Brewing Company. During the 30s and 40s, Raul operated a theatrical agency, bringing top Mexican and Latino entertainers to the United States. In 1944, he applied for a radio license, skirting wartime laws that restricted foreign language broadcasting by stating in his application that one of the new station's aims was to mobilize San Antonio's Mexican-American community to support the war effort. Raul's perseverance was rewarded when he was granted a license, and KCOR-AM went on the air in 1946 as the first full-time Spanish-language radio station in the country owned and operated by a Hispanic broadcaster. The station remains on the air today with the same format and the same call letters. RaulCortezź passed away in 1971, but the tributes have continued for years. In 1981, the city of San Antonio named the Raul A. Cortez Branch Library in his honor. In 2006, the National Association of Broadcasters presented its Spirit of Broadcasting Award to Cortez and his son-in-law, Emilio Nicolas. In 2007, Radio Inc. magazine created the Medallas de Cortez Hispanic Radio Award, recognizing outstanding achievement and leadership in Hispanic radio. Today, the Texas Radio Hall of Fame salutes Raul Cortez.
Thank you very much. My grandfather's story began a long time ago. In 1905, he was born in Veracruz, Mexico, and his family moved when he was 5 years old to Nuevo Laredo to escape the Mexican Civil War. It was safer along the border, where Pancho Villa was in charge. And as a young boy, young teenager, he was able to move himself and his brother to San Antonio. Where he then became an American, a very patriotic American. It was a difficult time. Everyone in this industry suffered greatly during later the Depression. And the Mexican community was no exception. It had it just a little bit harder because it was a segregated community. There was a lot of trouble, real despotism at that time, not just in the rest of Texas, but in San Antonio itself, very separated. And like today, the only thing that he saw that could really unite it, at least his community, was entertainment. So he started in entertainment. He formed a talent agency. He brought acts from Mexico. He eventually, being successful, he was able to open a dance hall and promoted dances, concerts, and so on. Not unlike Henry Peña today, who's much like him in all good sense. He saw that radio, because of its entertainment value, would attract an audience, and he eventually got the station that was mentioned, 1,000 watts, 1350 on the dial, and used the entertainment as a introduction really to what became his other love, which was civil rights. And he, as president, elected twice, LULAC, the only civil rights organization at that time, that was the League of United Latin American Citizens. And even before he became president, he was the district director, used his funds to fund lawsuits. One was a lawsuit that benefited every American in this country, and that was a famous case that decided that you were entitled to a jury of your peers. Believe it or not, before that, in these United States, all juries were white, Anglo-white. Hispanics, Black Americans could not serve on juries. Well, he won the case. Not he, but the lawyers he was funding. They won that case in the early 50s. And we all enjoy the benefits of that. Later he funded the case, Delgado, which desegregated schools for Mexican Americans. They were not able to segregate for African Americans at that time. There was the 3/5 law or whatever nonsense that was still in effect. But he for years fought the Jim Crow laws and all the other things that kept the Anglo community poor in San Antonio. Because that's what segregation did. It didn't just keep the victims, the direct victims of it, poor, but the characters that insisted on it had literally, in San Antonio, cut off 50% of the market. Imagine a society today where you eliminate 50% of your audience, of your store customers, of your restaurant customers. And that's why San Antonio remained a poor city for a long, long time, eventually overrun by Houston, because San Antonio used to be the largest in population. But thank God, Midwesterners, Easterners flowed into Houston, changed that city real quick. And eventually, after '68, when the hemisphere took place in San Antonio, the same thing started to happen there. And Spanish radio was flourishing. He did very well, but he did invest then the rest of his money into the TV station, which he also named after himself, KCOR, Channel 41, also 1,000 watts. That's all he could get at that time, and placed way up on the spectrum, a spectrum that was not even available on TV sets. So he had to go around selling converter boxes and rooftop antennas that in those days cost $150. Imagine that price today. That's over $1,500 today. And convince a relatively poor audience to buy those things to get a signal. Well, that little station later, when he had to sell everything to pay his debts, and my father, along put together an investor group to buy it. That little station today called KWEX was the first of what would become Univision television network. As a great author, American writer, I believe it was Emerson, said once, the best revenge is success. Four stations, which I was privileged to run several of them, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, became number one. Once the rating services decided to rate us, we went from 0 to number 1 in each of those markets. Overnight, it was like magic. What had happened before? Well, the wonderful thing is that today, this country remains, and increasingly so, bilingual. And that's a good thing. We join the rest of the world in that movement. Kids are studying Spanish in school. I maintain my Spanish, my first language, and very proud of it. Well, excuse me. He was a very man. He was very restless. He had a sense of urgency. He wore himself down, doing all these things at once, as if he was the only guy who could do them. And in those days he was. So today, thank God, he's honored by you, by this wonderful organization and this museum that has really, really touched my heart. I started in business on the TV side when I was 13. And so I got to see a lot of changes. He had already lost the radio station by then, but it continued right next door in the same building, KCOR Radio. I think it was the Titchener Group that owned it at the time. Nathan Severe, you might remember that name. He was well known for his big cigars and tough attitude, and he successfully ran the station. There was also KCR FM, by the way, which became San Antonio's first beautiful music station, and they were very successful. So that station continues. It's not in Spanish, I believe, any longer. The Univision is alive and well, thank God, and it's just a wonderful set of events that I got to witness as a kid. And I can't thank you enough. And I got to tell you just one more thing, bear with me, that as a newcomer to this location, I was so impressed last night walking through and seeing equipment I remember as a child, and meeting people and seeing people that I remember over the years. And this place is really special. Maybe some of you are too used to it, but I'm going to be a rabid supporter of this piece.